To work with pedigree diagrams, learners require a sound knowledge of genes, chromosomes, homologous chromosomes, alleles, both dominant and recessive, phenotypes, and homozygous and heterozygous genotypes.
Complete dominance occurs when the two alleles that determine a trait consist of a dominant and a recessive allele. The dominant allele will mask or hide the expression of the recessive allele in the phenotype when the genotype is heterozygous.
To distinguish between these two alleles, we're going to use a single letter, for example, B, in both an upper and lowercase format. The uppercase letter B will represent the dominant allele, and the lowercase letter b will represent the recessive allele. Now let's use the example of eye color, where brown eyes are dominant over blue eyes.
The genotype of an individual will consist of two alleles, one carried on each homologous chromosome. If the genotype of an individual consists of two dominant alleles, they are homozygous dominant, and this will be expressed in their phenotype as brown eyes. If the genotype of an individual consists of two recessive alleles, they are homozygous recessive, and this will be expressed in their phenotype as blue eyes. But if the genotype of an individual consists of one dominant allele and one recessive allele, they are said to be heterozygous, and the dominant allele will mask or hide the recessive allele so that the phenotype will be brown eyes. Geneticists use pedigree diagrams to study the inheritance of characteristics in a family over a number of generations.
We'll continue to use this characteristic of eye color and try to understand how it is inherited by analyzing a pedigree diagram. But first we need to understand some basics about a pedigree diagram.
We number or name the individuals in a pedigree diagram to make it easier to reference them later. And most pedigree diagrams will also have a key that indicates what each symbol means. Males are indicated using squares and females using circles. In this pedigree diagram, unshaded squares and circles indicate brown eyes, and shaded squares and circles indicate blue eyes. We can also see three generations. Generation 1 consists of individual 1 and 2. Individuals 3, 4, 5, and 6 make up generation 2, and individuals 7 and 8 make up generation 3. The lines on pedigree diagrams indicate the relationships between the individuals in them. From these lines, we can see that individual 1 and 2 married and had offspring 3, 4, and 5, 2 sons and 1 daughter. Individual 5 married an unrelated female number 6, and they had 2 children, a brown-eyed son and a blue-eyed daughter. Lastly, we can see that there are a total of 4 males and 4 females in this pedigree diagram.
To answer questions on pedigree diagrams in exams, it's always best to start by first analyzing your pedigree diagram fully and trying to identify as many possible genotypes on it.
For this pedigree diagram, it is given that brown eyes are dominant over blue eyes, and we will use the upper and lowercase letter b to represent these alleles. First, use the key to identify all the individuals with a recessive phenotype, namely blue eyes. We start with a recessive phenotype because the genotype of an individual with this recessive phenotype is always known. To display the recessive characteristic, they have to have 2 copies of a recessive allele, and therefore we know they are homozygous recessive, which is indicated by 2 lowercase letter b's. Fill these genotypes in on your pedigree diagram. The second step is to identify parents of offspring with the recessive phenotype. Individuals 1 and 2 are the parents of the blue-eyed daughter 4, and individuals 5 and 6 are the parents of the blue-eyed daughter 8. We make this our second step because any individual with a recessive genotype inherited one recessive allele from each of their parents. If the parents display a dominant phenotype, in other words brown eyes, then they must be heterozygous for eye color, which is indicated by 1 upper and 1 lowercase letter b. So what's important here is that offspring inherit 1 allele from each parent. If you know the phenotype and genotype of the offspring, you can work backwards to determine that of the parents. If the offspring of a parental pair display the recessive phenotype, in this case blue eyes, it means that the parents each have to carry at least 1 recessive allele in their genotype for it to be passed on. Here are 3 scenarios of different parents having blue-eyed offspring. Remember, for a child to have blue eyes, each parent had to contribute one recessive allele, so we know that each of the parents will have at least one recessive allele in their genotype. To determine what the other allele is, we have to look at their phenotype. Blue-eyed parents can only have blue eyes if they each have two recessive alleles. So when both parents display the recessive phenotype, they will only be able to produce offspring that also display the recessive phenotype. There are no dominant alleles to inherit. When one parent has blue eyes and the other has brown eyes, the brown-eyed parent must be heterozygous for eye color so that the brown allele masks or hides the blue allele in their phenotype, but they can still pass on the recessive blue allele to their offspring. When both parents have brown eyes and their offspring display the recessive blue eye phenotype, both parents must be heterozygous for eye color so that the brown allele masks or hides the blue allele in both their phenotypes, but they can still pass on the recessive blue allele to their offspring. So looking back at our specific pedigree diagram, individual 1 and 2 both have brown eyes, yet their daughter, individual 4, has blue eyes. And this is only possible if both 1 and 2 are heterozygous for brown eyes, so that they can each contribute one recessive lowercase b allele for blue eyes to their daughter. This is also true for individual 5 and 6, who had a blue-eyed daughter 8. Lastly, you must determine the genotypes of the remaining individuals on the pedigree diagram. This includes individuals 3 and 7. Do this by drawing Punnett squares to determine all the possible genotypes that could result from the parents. For example, for parents 1 and 2, the Punnett square would look as follows. Their son, number 3, has brown eyes. And from the Punnett square, we can determine that the possible genotypes that could cause this phenotype include big B, and big B, small b. Since we have no further information about individual 3, we cannot be sure which specific allele combination he actually has. The same logic applies for parents 5 and 6 and their brown-eyed son, number 7.
So there we have the final complete pedigree diagram for the inheritance of eye color in this particular family. And now it's going to be much easier to answer questions on this pedigree diagram.
To summarize the steps involved in analyzing a pedigree diagram displaying a complete dominance trait, Step 1. Identify all individuals with the recessive trait. Step 2. Identify parents of offspring with the recessive trait. And lastly, determine the genotypes of any remaining individuals. Here are some key takeaways from this video. The genotype of an individual that displays the recessive phenotype is always homozygous recessive. They carry 2 copies of the recessive allele, for example, 2 small letter b's. Offspring inherit 1 recessive allele from each parent. If the offspring displays the recessive phenotype, but the parent or parents display the dominant phenotype, the parent or parents are heterozygous. If the offspring as well as the parents display the recessive phenotype, all of their genotypes are homozygous recessive.
If you found this video useful, give it a like and subscribe to our channel so you don't miss any new episodes. Follow us on Instagram or Facebook to stay on top of the latest TAS news and launches. So that's it for now from the Answer Series, your key to exam success.